If you, good morning. Welcome to the first episode of Libertarian Marine. Today we have the leaders of the Cortland Black Lives Matter. We have Melissa Kiser and Christina Fury. I'm going to open it up to you guys right now. Give a little bit of background about yourself, where you came from, and how you came into being part of Black Lives Matter. Melissa, we'll start with you.
Okay, sure. So my name is Melissa Kiser. I live in Cortland, and I used to live in Barbados previous to this. I've been a U.S. citizen now for about 3 years, and I've been living in Cortland for about 15 years now, I want to say. So I've been through the whole citizenship process. I know probably a lot more about immigration than the average person should know. And I have my husband and my son. My son is biracial, and he has had his own incidents with the police already in Portland. And that was a big part of why I wanted to join Black Lives Matter and to be a part of that movement, was because I just really don't want him to be having these same conversations and fighting these same battles when he's my age.
Okay. So you said you came from Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's awesome. I don't know how you wound up here in New York. Furthest thing from paradise on Earth, but
Well, I went to college.
okay,
And
all right.
yeah.
So you said your son has already had interactions with the police. Now he's young, isn't he? He's a little
4.
guy. He's
Yeah, he's
4.
4. Yeah, and this happened when he had he was just turning 3 years old is when this happened. So the long and short of it is that there was an incident called into the police that really had nothing to do with him. But for some reason, and we know what that reason is, the police saw a group of kids coming out of the place where they were and immediately targeted him as a problem, even though he wasn't doing anything. And it was a lot of questioning. They asked him a lot of questions. He was terrified. Unfortunately, I wasn't with him. Another family member was with him. And they were not aware of how racism was playing into it, because what they saw and they thought was an appropriate interaction between the police and a child. But that absolutely is not the case. And we're all going to be happy that I was in Brooklyn when all this went down. But unfortunately, it really shook his confidence in the police. It shook his confidence about places where he could be safe in the community. And it really distorted how he wanted his interactions with the police to look like, because he was so afraid of them.
Wow. Okay. That's heavy. What in the hell could a 3-year-old possibly do to warrant an interaction with the police officer? But that's piss poor policing, if you ask me. That's common sense.
Yeah.
So, where is there any results that you have lived? I know, speaking on the phone, I said you're like a globetrotter when we spoke earlier, because you've been to France and everything like that, and
Yeah.
that's culture that most Americans don't have.
And that's true. But no matter how you look at it, people are very similar no matter where you go. The only real cultural differences are how they choose to live life. So just like, for example, I hate to say it, but one of the places I loved my absolute place I loved living was in Martinique. I lived with this amazing family named the Jean Pierres. And I still feel like they're my family, and everything that I did there with them was almost a mirror image of what I did when I lived at home with my parents. The only difference is, instead of school every single day of the week, they took Wednesdays off and they had their Sunday on Wednesdays. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's beautiful, it's rich culture, the food's amazing. But no matter when you come down to it, people are always people, no matter where you go.
Awesome. Well, Christina, I'm going to turn it to you. Tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, and
All right. So my name is Christina Fury, and I am a born and raised Cortlandite. I've had a few short experiences outside of the country, but nothing like Melissa's. But I I got married when I was really young, at like 19, and then had a bunch of children. So I have 5 kids, and I'm now divorced. And I recently graduated from SUNY Cortland. I went back to school to get my bachelor's in. I have a bachelor's in psychology with a double minor in forensic psychology and women, gender, and sexuality studies. And my experience around Black Lives Matter is I also work as a sign language interpreter, and so I've been working with groups of marginalized individuals since before I was 18, but 18 as a professional. And there's a lot of intersections across different experiences, because a lot of times, like, I'm working with people who are deaf, but they might also be deaf and Black, deaf and persons of color, deaf and LGBTQIA individuals. And so there's a way that all of those kind of meet, and you have to be able to see that person for all of who they are. And a lot of times we try to and I say we as like a society, we try to take a person and put them into a box based on one thing. And I think, everyone benefits when we can look at people, look at ourselves, and take the whole picture of what they are, and also what their experiences may be and how they may differ from mine. I'm a white cisgender female. My experience is very, very different than that of my friends. And I've always been a little bit obsessive and very, very interested in history and the stories that were not told. I don't necessarily, yes, the history book is interesting, but I want to know, why aren't the stories being told of the other people that were there? And I'm friends with some of the people on Black Lives Matter leadership, and when they asked me to come on board to be a part of it, I was just really honored at the privilege. I love being here. I love learning from them, and also being here in my community to create change, because Melissa can vouch for this as well. It's a small community, and you can too, Matthew. I can't go to Walmart without seeing somebody that I know. I can't really go anywhere in Cortland without seeing somebody that I know and that I have a history with, and that we've interacted multiple times. And so that's why I'm thrilled to be on BLM, and I'm just really, really excited to be here and to work with them as a team to help hopefully create some change within our community first, and then reaching outwards.
Right. All right. So one thing that I took that you said that, I've been trying to push real hard with my messages is community. We need to build a better community. Our communities are weak, and everything has been deteriorated really since the 60s and the 70s. The breakdown has happened, and we really need to rebuild the communities and understand that everybody within our communities, we're all of the same background. You're going to have different instances. I mean, I was a Marine, clearly. Lived down in North Carolina, lived out in California. You want to talk about a cultural difference? California from the East Coast is completely different. And even within our own country, just going to different aspects of our own country, you're going to see that. So, yeah, I like that. And now you guys are going to be even more recognizable, because people that you not even going to know are going to come up and say hi to you and stuff. It happens all the time now. So I hope you're in for the wild ride. That's awesome. So I don't think we have any comments yet, but so some of the stuff that, people have approached me with and that people have said to me is, there's BLM. They're not, the media paints you guys as a far left organization, very progressive, which libertarians, we really don't see you guys as that progressive, in the aspect that you're just trying to redo the system to where it is actually fair. So how do you guys address the fact that you have people out there in the community that sees your organization, sees you guys walking, and sees the posts that you guys do, what you're fighting for, and they see on the National BLM website, comrade terminology, and it's deemed a far left communist organization. How do you guys deal with that? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll start and I'll say that to me, it's just hilarious that asking for rights, not actual material possessions, can be considered communist, when you're just asking for the same rights for everyone. So I can't speak to whether BLM is far left or not, but I do know that our principles are just to make sure that Black people, people of color, all people in the community have the same access to resources and have the same rights and responsibilities as others. So I think a huge myth is that we are trying to make every single person in the world, change their whole worldviews. And in a sense, we're trying to educate people, and what they do with that information is really up to them. But all I want, and I know all I want for my son in any case, is that he and Christina's son can both go to the same job interview with the same credentials and the same everything, and he still have the same amount of consideration as Christina's son. I can't say this for myself, and I just can't say this for everyone, but I just don't care, as a general rule, if people are racist. I just don't want those people to have the power and the backing of a system to be able to impact the quality of my life.
Okay.
And I can't imagine that could be anything but fair.
No, and like I said, to libertarians, we don't see the group as the far left because realistically, you shouldn't have to ask for the rights that are already given to you. The best way that my guy Larry Sharp, he's down in Queens. He's a biracial man. He's a Marine, business owner, ran for governor. Great guy. And the best way I've ever heard someone describe what libertarianism is and what being a libertarian is being as conservative or as progressive as you want. You just don't force other people to be like you. And essentially what I'm hearing is you guys want that. You want to be able to go to job interviews. You want to be able to walk down the street and not be prejudged based on the color of your skin.
And that's a huge part of it. There's so much more that goes into it, but most of the Black men I know, and I know for my father, my uncle, my brothers, it's all the same thing. People see them, they're like these giant, the men in my family, I swear, they just come from the same mold. They're like 6'2", 250 Rastafarian men, like that's just what they look like. And I can tell you immediately, like I've walked with them, like they've come to pick me up from places, and if a white person's there, like immediately, like I see them clutch their purse a little bit tighter, or I see the looks like with my dad, like when he goes places with me, especially to pick my son up, like everybody is like staring at him, and all I can think is, like first of all, what is on your mind? Second of all, get it together. He is just another human being in the same space as you, doing something with his daughter and his grandson. It shouldn't be this novel. And unfortunately, I feel personally within the school systems that we have right now, we don't provide our kids with enough diversity in teachers to be able to grow up seeing this type of interaction and these types of people as normal. So they go through their whole high school career, they go through their whole elementary school career, and it's not until like they're in their tertiary education that they're like, oh my God, there's Black people that actually do other things except for what I see in the news, and it's very novel to them.
Yeah. Christina, do you want to address the same question?
Sure. I was just going to say, I think that as Melissa said, if asking for just basic rights and basic things that everyone should have in the fact that they are living and breathing and existing on this earth, regardless of their skin color, if that labels me as a far left progressive, then like I'm very labeled as that. Like, okay, great. It makes me question where you are in the fact that I'm progressive for asking for like just normal basic human rights. So that's kind of something where I would be like, I don't think I'm the one that needs to be put under a microscope here. I mean, you're free to. The other thing I would say is, no, I'm not going to force anybody else to take my position, but also I'm not going to sit here and say, one of the memes, because that's the way we communicate nowadays.
Yeah.
But one of the memes I see going around is, saying you like pizza and not wings. That's an opinion. We can disagree on that. Absolutely. Agree to disagree. I'm not going to agree to disagree on things like racism or homophobia or transphobia. Like, these are things I'm not going to agree to disagree on. And I will. These are places where I have an actual stand, and I'm not going to sit there and let you spew hatred or racist thoughts and not say something about it. And lastly, I would just say, as far as like the comrade terminology, that everybody, I understand words are important, and that can be an incendiary word at times. I would say, Melissa and I have both been very open with our houses and our yards and our, the coffee places in Cortland. And we've both been very open to come have coffee with us, come chat with us, come get to know us, because we're pretty darn normal. I mean, my house is chaotic. I have 5 kids running around under the age of 15, but I'm pretty normal. And I think if we get to know each other, also this goes back to building community. When we get to know each other and you can see me across the park, or you can see me in Walmart and be like, I might not agree with what she has to say, but you know what? She's doing the same thing I am, in that she's trying to figure out how to raise and get through the laundry of 5 children, or however many children you have. I think when we can find those similarities, that's when we can begin to connect as a community. And then, barring racism, homophobia, transphobia, things like that, we can really begin to build on the areas in which we agree, because we don't have to agree on everything. We just have to agree on those basic human rights issues.
All right, so it goes back to, we'll bring it back to the Libertarian Party, and we tend to follow the 80-20 rule. So if you agree with 80% of what I'm saying, you know what, the 20% we can discuss, we could communicate on, we could find consensus on those topics, and we can work through them. Talking, going off of what you said, I'm a huge podcast guy, clearly. And Rogan had on his podcast a gentleman by the name of Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis, he's a great guy. When you hear him, you're going to fall in love with his voice. He's a jazz musician from the Deep South. He's a black gentleman. And he talks about his interactions with racism and how he came to formulate a question when he was, I think he said he was maybe 8-9 years old, when he was a Boy Scout, and they're doing a Memorial Day parade, and they were throwing cans and bottles and rocks and whatnot at him in Maryland. And his dad was a delegate, so he's like, I grew up with people from different countries and this and that and all the time, and when we came back, we never understood it, or never really paid attention. And he brought up that he formulated the question of, how can you hate me when you don't know me? He left skin color completely out of it. And some of his best friends were Klans members when he got older, and just through sheer communication and friendship, like what we're doing now, talking and everything, those guys actually ended up leaving their organizations once they realized that the hatred and bigotry that was spewed within those organizations and everything that they were led to believe was false, and they left those organizations. I would check it out. It's a great episode. Again, the guy's name is Daryl Davis, but he still does music. He still puts music out. Jazz musician, great guy. So yeah, those are some of the questions that I was getting, because I was there during the walk in Homer. And Melissa, as we've spoke, I kind of sympathize a little bit with you until my wife smacked me in the head and was like, hey, you understand the interactions with the police, you understand, being called names, and everything, because I'm a tatted up dude, I'm a biker, And when I'm out, you see me in my vest, you see me in a certain way, and people clutch their purses tighter. I've had little white ladies grab their grandkids and pull them away from them and say, we don't associate with those dirt bags, stuff like that. And then I have to slightly educate them that I'm way more educated than they probably are. But my wife posed it in a very real situation that, Melissa, that you don't have. I could put a button up on, you don't see them, and I take my vest off, and I'm just a normal dude. And that was a huge eye opener for me that you guys don't have that. My brothers from the Marine Corps that I hold very tight to my heart, you know, he can't do that. And he's a built dude. Like, yeah, he's intimidating if you look at him real quick and you're like, oh geez, he's running at me. Yeah, he's gonna mess your ass up. But he's also the biggest teddy bear that you ever meet. Like, he's the nicest guy, and most people don't give him that time. Well, a lot of people in the Marine Corps, we gave each other time because it was a different environment. But out here, I mean, me and him, we talk regularly, but
yeah, and there's a lot to unpack there because, you know, like, there's all these little groups of people, and there's always going to be, you know, the exception to the rule. There's going to be the rule, and then there's going to be just general interactions. And I feel like one of the biggest barriers to us having that community that Christina's talking about, or that you're talking about, I honestly feel like the biggest detractors for Black Lives Matter are the pockets of people who really genuinely don't believe that they're racist. They've never had a bad thought about a Black person in their entire lives, and that, because that is their reality, they believe that is the reality for everyone else. And I mean, and it's really great that, you know, like, you're able to be self-aware and be able to pull yourself out of that. But I want to say, this weekend alone, I have spoken to at least 5 people who have that perspective, who say, you know, well, my grandchildren are biracial, and they go to school, you know, with other kids, and they've never been treated differently. And I'm just like, how do you know? You're not there with them. I'm terrified to send my kid to school just because I know that if something happened, I've heard how the school district here deals with it, and it's going to be a problem. But I also know that that's a huge part of what's holding us back for having more understanding in our community, is that people legitimately believe that because they have never had this experience, or they have never personally had those thoughts, that no one else possibly could. So they're offended when, you know, they're being told, you have benefited from a system that was built around the premise of white supremacy. You know, whether or not you engage in white supremacy means nothing. Your whole life you have benefited from this system, and it's unrealistic that this is going to be a sustainable way to keep moving forward, because things absolutely will change. No one's asking for permission anymore for things to change. No one is quietly sitting down and hoping that things change. Everybody's out there being loud and proud. And actually, the fact that the governor said, and I don't know if you guys saw this, he said, okay, protesters, we heard you, you win, you can go home. This is now when we're actually about to get louder, because we know that you've heard us. We're keeping your attention. We're not gonna, you know, slide out and just kind of hope that you remember us, you know, around the next general election. Like, that's something that I feel like we really do struggle with, is that people truly do believe that this is something that's going to pass. Their lives are going to go back to normal, whatever the hell normal was even before Corona. And, you know, it's not. It's really not. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to be quiet. We're going to be loud. We're going to be proud. We're going to demand equal rights, and we're going to tear down all of these little bits in the system that, you know, make it you know, just that inequity is real. And I think, honestly, one of the things that I'm always going to have a disagreement on with people about that is taking down some of these awful statues of people who have made their contribution to the United States. They've done their part, but they were actually pretty awful human beings. And if you want to look at the good things that they did in history, I've got books. I'll help you. Hell, I'll buy you some books. But we can't keep glorifying people who were slave owners. We can't keep, these monuments built to these men who did not see Black people as humans. And the more we start rebuilding and reframing what history is, which includes people of color, which includes Black people and Indigenous people, I think it is more productive to start those types of teachings and take away the distracting symbols of white supremacy that people are holding on to so closely because that's their normal. Not their history, it's their normal.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up because I actually wanted to bring up something that it popped in my head before we came live today about the statues. I saw the post that you posted, I think it was last night, about tearing them down and how, we did it in Iraq with Saddam and everything like that. Would you be opposed to something like what the Jewish League did? Now, I don't know if you know much about what the Jewish League has done. What the Jewish League has done, and maybe a different organization, but it's a Jewish organization over in Europe. They take their money and they maintain death camps and concentration camps throughout Europe. The Jewish do that. And the reason why they do that is that they do it to serve as a reminder to everybody else in the world. Because when you go through Dachau or you go through Auschwitz, you are being led through with the education from this Jewish organization to teach you the unbiased truth of what's going on. To serve as a reminder, hey, this is some nasty shit that happened here. This is unacceptable. And we're going to leave it here and we're going to maintain it to make sure it's a visible in your face reminder that this is the nastiness that came from this belief.
So that's a little bit challenging because I completely understand why that's necessary. And I have a couple of questions about it, but I'm going to save them for later. I'm not necessarily sure that I would be opposed to it, but I would need to know what it looks like. I would need to know the authenticity behind it because there is a place. So my mother is a history junkie. Like she travels to Africa to go to places that used to house slaves and that used to go, and she went into these awful dungeons. I have no idea why this is a hobby, but she goes in, she finds all of these places that, have where they house slaves and where, they left all their families. And this is her thing. That's what she does. And those places are maintained as well. And there's a part of me that understands the need to maintain history so that it doesn't repeat itself. But there's also a part of me that sees history repeating itself every 100 years. And I don't think that any of the monuments have really done anything to prevent it. I mean, seriously, even there's this monument in New York City that is supposed to be reminiscent of the Black troops who helped fight in the war. And here's the thing, first of all, that pisses me off. Everybody else got a statue. The Black people got the monument. Let's start there. But no one really tells their full story. No one tells the story of how white people could not bury them. No one tells the story of how they were all dumped in a mass grave and they weren't honored and no one knows their names. No one tells that part of the story. It's like, all right, Black people, we acknowledge you in this one part of history. Now shut up, type of situation. And it's not the same thing. It's not fair.
So I do know that in DC and Arlington, the Tomb of the Unknown was specifically designed for all the unknown soldiers that have felt both Black and white that were unnamed. Probably a little bit less of a sting because I hear you and that is bullshit. But I do know that was erected for all the unnamed. But it's not just specifically Black, but it's also the white too. But yes, Christina, I like the hand raise.
That's like my classic Zoom thing is like, I want to cut in.
Yeah, go for it.
So I would like to just say, and Melissa, please tell me if you're wrong. What it sounds like you're saying is, when it comes to white individuals who have done things, have lied, we talk about white people and white individuals as individual stories. When we talk about Black individuals and persons of color, we tend to talk about an entire race or an entire group of people. And I think one thing we really need to think about is these are individual lives, especially when we are talking about those who have perished through the slave trade, those who have perished in wars, looking at that whole picture as a group. Every single one of those people was an individual. They had a family. They had people who loved them. They had people they loved, and they had a whole story around their entire life. And they have just been erased by a group tomb. Thanks for what you did. Here's a place for all of y'all, as opposed to being like, this is one person. And I mean, when we people like to talk about, slaves and things of that nature, how people were stolen from Africa. And I use this word because I'm going to reword that. No, teachers and parents and lovers and architects and explorers and mothers and researchers, that is whose lives were erased in all of these areas. When we, especially as white people, can sit there and relegate someone with our words to a different place than us, when we can detach from that, that is when problems start to happen. I studied the Holocaust a bit the past 2 years in school, as well as victimization and trauma and the psychology behind those things. And one of the first ways you start to being able to relegate people so that things like the Holocaust could happen, so that things like Black individuals being killed and being lynched in 2020, the way that happens and people say it's okay or can find a way around that in their heads, is they detach that person through their words or the way they talk about them. And it doesn't have to be by using slurs, though that happens. It can be as simple as not thinking about them in their totality of their humanness. And so when we're speaking of individuals, I would, for someone to look at my life or Melissa's life and just relegate it to that of being a woman, that erases so many other truths of who we are and the people we loved and the legacy that we're leaving behind. And so I would just really, my point is that when we speak about humans, we need to be very, very distinct in who we are speaking about, because each of those people had a web of a life and a legacy that is the same as or even more important than each of our own.
No, and that you're absolutely correct. I mean, that's the reason why we have chaplains attached to military units when we're overseas. It's to not allow the dehumanizing factor of our enemy.
But we don't have chaplains for the individuals who were just lynched this week. We don't have chaplains going out when police shoot people in the back. Like, there's no chaplain there for that. So and the Marine Corps, I would not assume to know your experience. I would not assume to know the experience of a veteran. But I can say that my brother is USMC and served for 8 years. And so there's a little bit of closeness there. And while I love the Corps, I also think the Corps brotherhood is not the same as that of being Black or BIP.
I'm not quite sure about that, because my experience in the Corps and the brotherhood that's there is unlike what you will find out here by any means.
So here's the thing. So here's where the difference always comes in. At least this is legitimately how I feel about it. In the Corps, you have access to the same things. You can stand beside the next person and know that you will not be treated better than them. You will not be treated worse than them. I can't speak to it because I've never been in the Corps, but from all the information and all the people I know who've been in the Corps, it seems like the same thing. But the problem is, when you step out of the Corps, your paths diverge, and it's completely different outside of there. Because Christina's right. when you're in the Corps, you have someone who cares about you. You have someone who's invested in you. You have an entire system of people who would very much like to see you be successful and who very much want to make sure that after you get the Corps, you have your VA benefits and you have all the things that you were promised at the beginning of your tenure. The only thing that's promised to Black people when at the beginning of their lives is hardship. It starts there. And they can go into the Corps and they can love the camaraderie, but they also know that when they step out of the Corps, they're not able to take a uniform off. They have their Blackness that's still going to be a barrier. And they're still going to be subject to the same atrocities that every single other Black person in America is going to have to be subject to. Because when the police see a Black man running away from them, they're not thinking, is this person a police officer? Was this person a Marine? Was this person a soldier? Was this a person a father? No, they especially with Maude, they just decided that they were going to shoot. And that's where the difference does come in. And we don't, as Black people, we just don't have that. We don't have the investment. We don't have the, there's something that I don't know, you guys have probably heard about it before. There's pink tax and there's Black tax. And for Black tax, we just always have to work a little bit harder to kind of show people that we absolutely can do. I can tell you with every single job that I have had to work 5 to 10 times harder to make sure that I still had the same opportunities as my coworkers who called off sick, who showed up for work late, who, decided that they just weren't going to show up one day and nobody was worried about it. Those are all things that outside of the Marine Corps, the Marine brothers are dealing with. And it's so painful to know that, especially since they serve their country so well, that this is the treatment that they're going to get.
Right. No, trust me, I recognize that. What I would love to happen, and this is something that me and my wife have discussed. This is stuff that I've discussed with my policy team and everything, is those same resources that we had in the military be provided more readily out here. Because we did have a lot of resources. If you needed something while you were in, it was there. And it wasn't, a lot of times, it was first come, first serve or whatever it may be, but it was definitely there. If you needed counseling, it wasn't, breaking your freaking pocket to go get counseling. It was, whatever it may have been. Yes.
There's actually, I was reading a research report last week that was just saying that in communities, I might get the statistic wrong, but I can give you the link later so people can go look at it. But it's basically saying that for the more community organizations that are in the community, that helped lower incidents of police brutality. And so it is like what you're saying, the more services that we can make available to those in the community, that does show a positive interaction with what's going on in the community. And one thing I will absolutely always stand behind is we do not have enough mental health providers for anyone, whether we're talking about regular community members, whether we're talking about veterans, whether we're talking about people in the service, police officers. And that's something that I'm always going to get behind, is the ways we can make services more available to those in need. Coming from a college campus situation recently, our health services were backed up horribly, and that's a huge thing for college students, during during Corona hitting, also our statistics regarding how many have anxiety disorder or a mental health diagnosis coming to college. Like, that is, mental health services, especially in the community, are something that we need across the board, especially for more marginalized groups. And speaking of that, we also need counselors and mental health services that are people of color, that are queer, that are on the and that can better serve marginalized groups.
Yeah, I mean, that's been shown with the decay of communities, that we don't have enough services. Melissa, I know when we've spoke on the phone, you brought up a very real, thing that would be great for someone like your husband. a service that helps people that are in interracial relationships and everything. Yeah, I mean, that's brilliant.
And I think, so, and I just want to use a real life example just to see if I could put it in a little bit of perspective. So I don't know if you, yeah, I know you guys heard my awful rant on Friday because of my friend that got in contact with me about her little boy and, you know, the whole, I don't know how explicit we can be here, but,
go as explicit as you want.
That's fair. So, he was either minding their business and this person, this grown adult, called this little boy a nigger. He like said it in front of his mother and told his mother that she could probably afford better face masks if she didn't have a nigger child. And the truth is, when I spent some time inside of this little of this little scope of this one incident, and no, it's not an isolated incident, but I spent my time in the scope of this little incident, and I was wondering, I touched all these bases and no one knew whose responsibility it was to really do the follow-up on this. There's nothing in place for the person that made those remarks, even though it's been told to me that they're pretty sure they knew who it was. And there's a part of me that knows that people mean super well when they do things like this. But, you know, it's really sad that the first thing they do is, this little boy went through this traumatic experience, but the first thing they're going to try to do is humanize the protagonist in this because they're white. And it was just, I know it wasn't meant to come off like that, but it was just like, well, you know, he's just a guy that lives over there. You know, he's got some mental health issues. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck what's going on in his world. I want to know like what we're gonna do about it. Okay, so we're gonna go and we're gonna talk to the guy. We're gonna talk to 7-Eleven. But who is we? How do we know that this is not something that this person does regularly? You know, and that this person has access to the community. Does this person have services? Does this person is this person having enough support to keep up on their medications? Why are they wandering around 7-Eleven if they're not going to buy something late at night? Are they looking for camaraderie? And then they're taking out their aggressions on the first people they see. And no one knows what the follow-up really has to be. And it's very frustrating to me that in all of this, a 6-year-old he feels like something's wrong with him because of the color of his skin. And no one knows what to do about it. And it's pissing me off. Because here's the thing, his mom and the rest of the community should not be sitting back wondering, well, geez, I wonder what we should do about this. No, there should already be services in place to address this person who caused the problem, to support the little boy who's going through it, and to provide some kind of feedback and some support to his mother, because his mother is white. And I don't think she ever had it in her mind that this was a conversation she was going to need to have with her 6-year-old. And none of those things are in place. None of them.
Right. And now here's another question that I'm going to pose then is she equipped to have those conversations?
No, I don't think so. I legitimately don't. I feel like she did her absolute best. I feel like there's nothing differently that I would have been able to do. The only difference between us is because I can tell my son, I know how you feel. I know what you're going through. And I know my son's going to feel safe knowing that mommy's locked and loaded. She's going to go take care of that situation. But not every kid has that. And that's what I don't think people understand. And I've talked to so many of these older ladies who have, and they're white ladies, they have their grandkids who are biracial. And they don't understand that when they fail them in situations like that, their grandkids don't feel safe to be around them anymore. I know as a parent, if that's the situation, I'm going to question, can you take care of my child? And it's not fair to mom to even have to be in a situation where she needs to have a rape conversation with her 6-year-old at 11 o'clock at night, you know, on a Thursday. Why? Why was that even an option? So I think that for me, anyway, that's where a lot of my frustration comes from, is the lack of services, the lack of community commitment to understanding that we all have a role to play in this. And just understanding that, yeah, I know everybody's not me. I know not everybody's going to get mad and go fix it and like try to change the world. I get that. But more people need to then just not stand in our way when we try, is all I'm asking.
Well, and I think I want to just point out there for a second, Melissa, like, as we were talking about earlier, people are like, oh, this isn't my experience, therefore I'm not racist, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to point out the privilege in the situation. Even this, and you're right, this mom did the best that she could, but the fact that you said she was a white mother, the privilege that she and I share in that, no, it never, I would never cross my mind to have a conversation with my son. My son is white. Unless I am, because I work with BLM, because of my I know that we have discussions with my son about the fact that his friends that look different from him will have a different experience and what his role is in that. But the privilege that is indicative of being a white woman in that, that's not something I think about. However, you, on the other hand, you've already had not just a conversation with Beth or with your son about this, but you've also had a situation that actually had to be addressed. Like, you live your everyday life now in Cortland in a situation where you are constantly addressing these things, and that's a different situation than mine. I can choose to put myself in a situation where I am actively being anti-racist, but it's not my life. And I mean, and more of us need to choose to be anti-racist in this matter and learning about it. But that's where the privilege comes in, because I have a choice in this, whereas you don't, and neither, this mom kind of did. Now, as a biracial parent, she can still choose how she decides to go from here. But she's kind of had this baptism by fire into having a biracial child, and then what that means. But the privilege that is just so apparent in that story, it's just it's mind-boggling to me, and it hurts, and it also spurs me on to be to learn more and do more and be willing to. That's the one thing I appreciate about you, Melissa, is that you are always open to educate people, even like above and beyond when I'm like, man, this woman's got to be getting tired, and you're still showing up and doing the work. And I'm always amazed by that. So, and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I know with our conversations that we've had, we've had some really good ones. And, I want to bring this up now. So we all three of us have identified that there needs to be more resources. More resources to the public, more resources in different aspects for different marginalized groups. The system needs to be redone to get rid of the transgressions that are written into the laws. I'm going to say that the only group that can actually redo the system is our legislators. We could push that at the legislation and through lobbying efforts. So there's that. Now, for the push for more resources, do you think that should be government funded? Now, this is where we're going to start probably getting some comments here. And do you think that we should be able to work with third-party entities to provide these services for the community, if absent the government?
So for me personally, this is where I start to have a bit of a problem with NPOs, because NPOs are really supposed to be there. They get the tax cuts and everything, or I should say the tax cuts. They don't pay taxes. Exactly. So that they can provide a service to the community. I also understand that NPOs still have bottom lines that they need to reach to be able to stay sustainable, and they still have to provide a good quality of service. But I also think that it's time to look to more of these NPOs to provide those types of services to the community. I mean, if you're not going to pay taxes, you need to be doing some sort of community service and some kind of community involvement. Do I feel like the government needs to pitch in? If there are people that are below the poverty line, that the NPO that are far beyond the scope of an NPO, like, so say for example, you have I'm sorry, I keep saying NPO, it's a nonprofit organization, and I just realized people may not understand what that is. I apologize. But I honestly, legitimately feel then, like, for people who are below the poverty line, who do have access to food stamps and who clearly need additional help, that yes, then there needs to be some kind of government action. Because, and this is something I think about a lot, a community is only as strong as its weakest link. Okay. And we have Da Vinci Drive and Cosmos Hill in Cortland. If you were to judge Cortland based on those two streets, you would say that Cortland does not need any more help.
Yep.
But then if you venture down into our neck of the woods and you really see some of the things that are going on, you would understand that even though we want more participation by the government, I absolutely believe that it should first go through the NPOs. And if there's a place where that's falling short, then the government needs to pick it up. But I think that there's already a financial resource there that really needs to be tapped to provide people with better services. The other thing I want, and this is something that Christina and I talk about a lot, is more accountability when it comes to these counties and the state's budgets. Because I feel like there's a lot of money that like goes places that are well-meaning, and this is going to be a pet peeve when I'm a little bit pissed about it, is the amount of money that they're investing in a new prison, or a new jail, I should say, not a prison, in Cortland. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, like, okay, I understand that the current jail is probably a little raggedy. Okay, I can understand that. But the amount of money that you are spending in housing people for the prison system, as opposed to investing in actual rehabilitation, it's kind of not balanced. Because I haven't seen the initiatives. I haven't seen anything that says, okay, yes, we're taking care of this new jail, but we're also making sure that the people that are going into jail, when there is a plan, there's like some kind of rehabilitation plan with measurable outcomes on how people are doing, with social workers who are going to be working with them, who's going to be checking in on them, so that jail and prison are not like a cyclical thing that keep happening to people in the community. But as far as the other services that you're talking about, I really think that NPOs should be the first stop, and then the government should be able to pick it up. And if you have private insurance, then that's good too.
All right, Christina, you got something on this?
I mean, as Melissa said, she and I have talked about this a lot, so she really hit all the high points. I'm very pro community supervision to be able to help rehabilitate. I definitely take a rehabilitative stance when it comes to the carceral system and things along those lines. And yeah, I'm going to leave it at that because Melissa touched on everything.
So what you guys did, I love it. I love it because you made this libertarian happy by not involving the government more, because the government has created the damn issue. They can't. I'm gonna go out. They can't unfuck themselves when they completely fuck the system in the first place. So
Exactly.
It's awesome because as a libertarian, we think that a lot of this stuff we could fix just by third party or community involvement. What you said is absolutely true, Melissa. We do need, and Cuomo, I know this ain't gonna get to his ears because he don't listen to the peasants, but if the king would actually listen once and actually make a special committee, because he likes his committees, and make a committee to where they held nonprofit organizations accountable for their tax cuts.
Yeah.
That there are certain aspects. I mean, if we're gonna look at it on a real side, I mean, Salvation Army and Goodwill, I refuse to give to them just because they get everything for free, they turn it for a profit, and their CEO sits in a mansion.
Right.
No, you guys you're not taking that money and putting it in, you're putting it into coffers, which is, I guess, legal in the aspect, but it's not morally just. You should be putting that back into the communities in which it came from, not sitting on it, letting it accrue interest like they do, because that's what colleges do as well. Cornell's notorious for it. They don't pay taxes and they do it as well. So that we need to fix as well, because even C corporations, which hold stocks on the stock market, they're supposed to be doing community enrichments as well in order to keep their ability to trade on the open market like that. Yeah.
One thing I just wanted to say, and Melissa's heard me rant on this. The other part of organizations that do not pay taxes that could make a huge impact when it comes to the community is the religious sector and the churches. Without picking a side or my religious background, get off your butts and get involved. The amount of times I have sat on things about hunger coalitions and making change in the community, and I look around and there is no people of faith, not people of faith, but I'm saying people who represent a body of faith, or the amount of times that I have seen male leadership be unwilling to work with people who have female leadership because of biblical misinterpretation. I'm just really sick of it. And if we want change in our communities, like churches, get on board. Start talking with groups with like Black Lives Matter. I mean, I'm more than willing to talk with people, and maybe I seem a little bit fired up about this or maybe a little hostile towards it, but it's just because I'm sick of y'all not putting your money where your mouth is, which is how we want to help people. And there's a lot of opportunities in Cortland to make Cortland better, and there's a lot of money sitting in the church and the religious organizations around Cortland that can make a huge difference in our community. And instead, they're being able to just sit on their little thrones and be uninvolved. And I'm kind of not for it. But hey, you don't pay taxes, so give back to your communities where it's going to make a difference.
So I do know, and this may add a little fuel to your fire, but I do know that there was two or three. I know the church that I go to in Homer was at your guys' march, and the priest there has come out and has said that they're going to be offering more services to people if they need it. The issue with the churches is, as you said, they don't have to pay the taxes, especially in these areas. Some churches get more than like my small church. They don't. A lot of people don't donate. A couple of years ago, we went without a boiler. Our boiler broke at the church, and we couldn't get money to fix it. So there are those kind of things, but they're not widely decimated. And for the longest time, it's probably the 80s, the decline of the prevalence of religion and churches in America have slowly gone down. So people don't think of them as their first, don't think of them as being able to go to the church if you need to talk to a chaplain, if you need to talk to the priest, and they're there. You just need to seek them out, and a lot of people don't do that.
Right. But also, even like bringing this back to the Black Lives Matter issue, how many churches in the area are places of comfort for individuals of color and Black people? How many churches are, when we're talking about building community, people aren't going to want to go to a place where they don't know people. So I guess to bring it back, I would say, let's get involved in community in a way that doesn't necessarily strictly benefit you. That's another thing, being in Black Lives Matter, and being involved in it is we need people to show up, especially leaders, but not necessarily in the space of leadership. We need them to show up in a way that doesn't benefit them, and instead amplifies and centers the voices that are being spoken and the stories that are being told there, and then take that back to their congregation and teach their congregations how to be anti-racist. And the way that they can do that is get involved with our community in the areas that are needed in Cortland, because there's some major class separations in Cortland, if we want to talk about that. And that's really where I'm really saying it at the churches. We need you to show up in ways that don't benefit you, but instead benefit and center voices at the forefront of that, which would be, the stories and the experiences of those persons of color and Black people that are leading Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
And if you don't, and is, if you don't have money, like I understand some, especially the small congregations, you know, some clergy goes without pay and things like that. You know, the fact that you're showing up and talking and speaking out. I believe there's clergy in Homer who's running a series
The library.
on courageous conversations, and like that's great. You know, money isn't the only thing. Partnership and amplification and support is huge. But I'm saying this to the churches who do have money and who misappropriate. We're watching. We know when you're here. We see when you show up and don't want to listen. That's another thing we've run into. We see it when you show up and don't want to follow the very strong leadership that that we have in our organization, and like it's not going unnoticed. So
yeah, no, I agree with that. Hold on, just typing something up real quick. Yeah, I mean, so we're gonna wrap this up. It's been an hour and 1 minute. This is a good one. Unfortunately, I haven't nobody's posted comments, but hey, it's good because the message is getting out there. Is there anything else that right now I'm going to give you guys the floor? What can we do? Is there any events coming up? Is there, are we, next time you guys plan to march, you're going to see my ass there, my family. We march with you guys. We stand with you. Is there anything else that the community could do to help raise awareness, to help push the agenda of redoing the system? Because before we leave, I want you to address a couple more things, because a lot of people believe that Black Lives Matter wants to just get rid of police departments. This whole, what do they call it, defunding. They think that it just means that officer, what is he, Abbott, right? Jesse will just disappear. These guys won't have jobs anymore. We won't need law enforcement if we defund them. And I got my own theories on how that goes about and how we can actually do this. Melissa, I know you've already heard my ideas on it. What do you guys say about the defunding, and or do you want to abolish the police departments, or is it you identify that we need law enforcement, but we need to redo the system and redo the way of policing?
Well, for me, I honestly believe that we just need the police to do police jobs. We don't need the police. So on any given day, the police has to be an ambulance driver, a paramedic, a mental health counselor, crisis person, hostage negotiator. There's so many jobs that the police do that the police don't have to do. And it would be nice to have police just focus on policing and law enforcement, as opposed to having to deal with, a mental health crisis. I'll use another real life example. Someone was at my house and the police got called. First of all, they had a shitty attitude, and I'm standing by that. I'm pretty positive I'm on the report as being belligerent, and this was only a couple weeks ago. And second of all, it was in theory, because a waste of police resources, which I do not stand behind at all. I hate what people call the police for petty bullshit. Save the police for when there's an emergency. And even my child knows what an emergency is. Is there fire? Is there blood? You know what I mean? Those are emergencies. But, the person got called for my friend, who, by the way, was perfectly fine. But called on my friend because her estranged husband decided that he wanted to make waves. And in theory, her meds were making her act weird. We'll get to that later. But nobody showed up for mental health. The mobile crisis unit did not show up. Instead, there were 3 or 4 police officers at my house. And I still am not positive why. No one was in danger. There was no reports of anything illegal going on. And it almost felt to me like the police were kind of justifying their presence there more than they were doing their actual job. So that's what I think we need. We don't want to abolish the police. If I call and I say, okay, I'm driving up Route 23 and there's cows in the middle of the road, why do the police need to come and take care of that? If I call and I say, well, my neighbor, I think my neighbor is having a fight with his wife, and this happens a couple times a week, that should be someone that's trained in counseling. Like I am just concerned that, the child next door is not getting enough food, is not, that's definitely a CPS call. But there's so many better ways that the police resources can be used as opposed to calling someone. Literally, some baby birds fell out of the tree across the street from my house a couple days ago. And someone literally asked, are you going to call the police? And I'm like, there are 2 baby birds on the ground. It's going to be okay. Just walk away. Don't help. Like, this is what I mean. Like, I swear to God, I feel like every time, I've never really been in a situation where the police absolutely needed to be there and they were there. There was no like emergency. So
Yeah.
no, we're not trying to abolish the police. Actually, if you look at it from our perspective, we're trying to provide support for the police so that they can do their jobs well. We want to disseminate all these different minor roles that they have to play and give it to someone else who doesn't necessarily, who's not going to be, their lives are not going to be in danger, who's going to be actually trained, qualified, gone to school to do all the things that they need to do. And you can focus on emergency.
Right.
That's pretty much like where we stand on that. We need the police. We value the police in our community. We understand that there's going to be situations where we need someone with a gun to show up. But I gotta tell you, the fact that on my street, someone saw 2 baby birds on the ground and their first response was to call the police. And I'm like, no, you don't call the police for baby birds. I felt like I should make her a list. Like of reasons to call the police. That baby bird doesn't make it on the list. Did you just see someone shoot someone else? There's a good reason to call the police. Did you just watch this guy walking minding his business and somebody else come punch him in the face and keeps bludgeoning him? That's a great reason to call the police. Is there a fire? Call 911. Great. But for the baby birds, we're gonna leave that one to the community members.
Right. So you wouldn't be opposed to, and this is something that blew my mind because, being a Marine, being a tactical firearms instructor, a practitioner of martial arts and everything like that, I'm constantly training. We constantly trained in the Marine Corps. Would we, in finding out that on average, about 4 to 5 hours annually, cops are provided training for multitude of things that they're supposed to be doing. Anything from combatives to their firearms training to, talking to the community, de-escalation. They're actually not really trained in de-escalation tactics. They're opposite. How to deal with the escalation.
Right.
Now,
that's fair.
And that's the thing is when we would get ready for deployment, we would spend roughly 6 months in training, learning the cultural backgrounds of where we're going to be going, the cultural norms, their how to not offend anybody, how to de-escalate. We had levels of escalation. We had to learn their language. I know up in Syracuse, just the district around St. Joe's Hospital is a very large Sudanese population. The Sudanese are also Muslim. Our Syracuse police officers are not equipped to dealing with African Muslims because there's the culture of being Sudanese, and then you also have the religious culture of being Muslim. Well, a lot of people aren't trained for that, but they're only getting the training for 4 hours a year, Do you think that we should be offering more training?
Yeah.
Yes,
Go ahead,
Christina.
Well, I was actually, I like how you segued into that, because I was going to say, as Melissa said, if the police officers were being called for things that we need we need someone armed to show up for, and that would give them so much more time. And I mean, tell me if I'm wrong in my thinking here, but that would give them so much more time to be able to be trained. If you are going to have a gun and weapons, you should be some of the most highly trained people. I mean, look at the Marine Corps. They are some of the most, if not the most highly, outside of maybe special forces, some of the most highly trained individuals in the world. In that, they're also held to an incredibly high standard to use that training. And so if we are asking our police officers to go out and work in the community and we are not able to provide them with adequate training, then what are we doing as governments? Like, what are we doing as a county asking them to do these jobs? I see some of my friends are police officers, and I see a lot of times, their spouses saying things about, wanting their husbands or wanting their spouses to come home. We want that too. I am not anti-police. I do not hate the police. I, if anything, would rather there be more support, both, like I said before, mental health services, but also on the training side of things. And hopefully, as Melissa said, by lowering what we call the police officers for, what is actually an emergency, what is actually within their scope of practice, by lowering that, we would hopefully be able to up their training, because asking them, there's nothing more that frustrates me in my personal life, like my professional life as an interpreter, is being asked to do a job that I do not have the appropriate training for.
Right.
And as an interpreter, every time I get a phone call about a job to take or to deny, I have to go through in my head, as part of my code of professional conduct, do I have the training to do this? Am I the best fit? And if not, if there's a reason that I'm not the best fit for this, it is my personal responsibility to deny that. And we don't let our officers do that. And yet we're not providing them with good enough training. Like that, this does not add up in my mind. This is unfair for our office to expect them to do something that they have not had adequate training for, or if there's a way that we could find a way to provide better training for them. And also, just on another thing, when it comes, going back to what you said, to abolishing the police or defunding the police, the first thing that I would say is, please, anyone who's seeing those things and is feeling that like, oh my goodness, what is this? Go look up what we're actually talking about. I mean, we use abolish the police, and a lot of people turn that to abolish slavery. They tried doing that, and there's still modern day slavery through the prison system. So like, even if we police, it's not going anywhere, because here we are how many years later and we still have slavery. So and I know that that's a very incendiary comment, but I will absolutely stand behind it. So my thing is, so number one, educate yourself. If you see something on Facebook or you see something online that makes you go, oh my gosh, I can't get behind this, oh my goodness, and makes you kind of really have a reaction to that, I would say go educate yourself about that. Do the work yourself, especially as white people. We like to, reach out to Melissa and say, oh, hey, what do you mean by that? I don't like that you're saying that. Before having gone and doing the work myself, and then saying, I read X, Y, and Z. I still have some questions. Could you tell me your opinion on X, Y, and Z? That's an appropriate way to ask for someone's help, as opposed to just saying, I don't like this. Tell me everything about it and educate me. No, there's some personal stuff there. And then two resources for that. I talked to you earlier about Rachel Cargill on Instagram. She's doing great work. Her Patreon account, Doing the Great Unlearn, is a great way to learn about a lot of these issues. And another is the book Stamped from the Beginning by Ibrahim X. Kendi, Kendi. I know a lot of them are backordered right now in the hard copies, but it's a great book to kind of dive into issues about race. And he also has a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist, which has been pivotal for me. And it's helping me on my journey to become a better ally. And so now I'm going to shut up and turn it back over to Melissa, because
No, I'm good. You hit all the high points.
All right. So now, before we wrap this up, Melissa, you own your own business, correct?
Yep.
Do you want to, let everybody know what it is and what you do? And
oh my God. So my job is the most boring job in the world. I am
you own your own business. Come on.
Yeah, so I own my own business. It's called Empower Brokerage. I am a support broker for OPWDD. So basically, what that means is that the state provides a certain bucket of money for people with developmental disabilities, and families or the people themselves, they hire me to sit down with them and really figure out how this money should be properly spent. And then we spend the money to make sure they get all their services, to make sure that we stay on top of bills. And I work with a lot of different agencies to just kind of make sure that people go to the agency that's the best fit for them. I typically only, and it sounds terrible because, you know, you're in a business, so you want to make money, but I typically only take on families that I care a lot about because I feel invested in my kids' futures. So you'll see I have like quite a bunch of little kids on my caseload, but I typically will stay with everyone up until graduation and beyond because I have this invested commitment in their success. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not exciting, and I spend a lot of time just arguing with the state about things.
So do I. I yell at our legislators quite regularly.
Yeah, I get it. Believe me.
Christina, what about you? You got your own business, or you got anything you
Yes.
do? All right.
Yep, I do. I have my own business as an American Sign Language interpreter, and I work all over New York State. Sometimes I contract with agencies, but I also do direct contracts where I work directly with certain groups. I love it. It lets me, you know, I get to see things that people, like I've been in a surgical suite to see a pacemaker put in because my patient was just consciously sedated, so she still needed interpretation. So I got to do that. I've gotten to meet some really cool people. And yeah, like it's a great job. It lets me meet a lot of different people and be exposed to a lot of different viewpoints, and I love it. I do that, and then I also do some writing and editing work on the side, and then I'm also going back to grad school this fall for community health. So kind of, you know, going back to school so I can just invest back into Cortland community and the surrounding communities. So thanks for asking.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, as a libertarian, we want to push small businesses. So if we could get you guys some more business, if you could take it on and you want it, by all means, let's do it. Let's support local. I want to say thank you to both of you guys for coming on. It was great. I'm hoping that we dispelled some of the rumors and the misconceptions of the movement and the group. And by all means, if you guys have any more events coming out, don't hesitate to, you know, reach out. I'll put it up so we can get more exposure. And I'm going to leave it to you guys. If you guys have anything else that you want to say real quick, then by all means.
No, I think that it's really good that, you know, we're actually having some good conversations about this. I know it's going to be a very long road. There's nothing in me believes that this is a situation, a cause that's going to be over a month from now or a year from now or even 10 years from now. But we're doing it, we're chipping away at it. And we just want everybody to know Black lives mattered 400 years ago. They still matter today. They're going to matter tomorrow. And we're going to be here to keep making sure that we make the changes from the ground up so that it's a benefit to everybody.
Christine, you got anything last that you want to put out there before?
Just thank you so much for having us. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to speaking with you more.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. This will be posted on YouTube. It will be up. The YouTube page is Libertarian Marine. It'll be on Matthew McIntyre for Assembly 125. It'll be on my personal page, Black Lives Matter, Cortland, New York. You can find it on the Facebook page right there. And I'm pretty sure you guys will probably share it to your own personal pages, and it's on currently right now. I put it on Cortland County Libertarians Party. So we're going to be getting a lot of views, and hopefully, you know, we'll spread the word, and don't hesitate to comment on it when people put their comments, because that will come later. That'll come later. All right. So thank you guys for coming on and being part of the first episode.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.